Hey, Health Junkies. On this episode of the HealthFix Podcast, I'm interviewing Dr. John Douillard. Holy cow. We're talking about a lot of things, but most importantly, Ayurvedic medicine, which is an Indian type of medicine. We're going to dive into some fun stuff. We're going to talk about the lymphatics. We're going to talk about why weight gain happens over a certain age and why the belly fat and all that stuff actually could be more of a congested gut lymphatic system than actually a hormone problem altogether. Mind blown. So you're going to love this podcast, especially if you're struggling through metabolism, your weight, and you're kind of like, I've done all the things. I don't know what to do next. And maybe you've thought about lymphatic system. Maybe you've thought about working on your gut, but you're not sure where to go. You're not interested in taking copious amounts of supplements and things of that nature. And maybe you want to just work with food. This podcast will help you get some ideas. Now, does John talk about different supplements? Of course. There are certain herbs that can help to enhance the lymphatic system, enhance digestive system. Once you know what your constitution is and what's happening Ayurvedically, and he has a quiz just for that. You'll check my podcast notes out for that at drjkrauseND.com. So who is this John Douillard guy? He is a chiropractor, but he ended up being trained in Ayurvedic medicine, fell in love with it, and here we are. He's a globally recognized Ayurvedic and sports medicine educator with 40 plus years of experience. That's a lot of experience. He's the host of Ayurveda Meets Modern Science podcast and the author of 7 health books, including the bestsellers Eat Wheat and The 3-Season Diet. And he's on a mission to provide free Ayurvedic knowledge to the public. He created lifespa.com. We're going to talk about the website and all the resources. There are a ton of them on there, where he connects ancient Ayurvedic wisdom with modern science. And my goodness, he is a wealth of knowledge. There's a lot of really cool, digestible information on his website. And, you know, the biggest thing I want you to be thinking about during this podcast is like, balance. How can I restore balance instead of thinking about other things that you can use as band-aids to help with your overall health? So let's introduce you to Dr. John Douillard. Welcome to the HealthFix Podcast, where health junkies get their weekly fix of tips, tools, and techniques to have limitless energy, sharp minds, and fit physiques for life. Dr. John Douillard, welcome to the HealthFix Podcast.
Great to be here, Jannine. Thank you so much.
Hey, you know, I'm always interested when someone is really into something like Ayurveda, because let's face it, you know, it's still in the West and in the US in particular, folks are still kind of learning about it. Yoga was kind of the big introduction to that type of medicine and bringing things in. Obviously, Ayurveda is different than just yoga. Folks are starting to wake up a little bit more to it. But chiropractic background, how did you end up falling into Ayurvedic medicine from there?
Well, I mean, it was a long time ago. It was probably in early 1980s. I was taking a 500-hour acupuncture class, and they just mentioned Ayurveda. And for whatever reason, it just kind of clicked. And I was like, what? There's this ancient traditional system of medicine in India. It's been around for thousands of years. And for some reason, I was more attracted to that than Chinese medicine. I ended up going to a lecture a few months later, meditation and yoga and Ayurveda. And afterwards, I went up to the Indian Ayurvedic doctor there, and I asked him, I said, and I was training for an Ironman. I said, I'm training for an Ironman, and I wonder if, according to Ayurveda, would this be good? You know, like, what do you think? And he looked at me and was like, what is that? And I said, well, an Ironman is like a 2.5-mile swim in the ocean, a 112-mile bike, and a 26-mile run. He looked at me and was like, why do you do that? And I was like, no answer. I never really, no one ever asked me why I did it. I just did it because I could, kind of thing. And he looked at me like I was an idiot. And he said, do you meditate? And I said, yes. Thank God I had something positive to say. And he said, do you sleep while you meditate? And I said, deeply. I get this really deep sleep. I conk out. It's great. And he looked at me again like I was an idiot and said, meditation is a completely different state than sleep. When you're sleeping, when you should be meditating, you're exhausted. Meditation is a state of being alert and resting at the same time. It's like the two opposites coexisting. And I'm going like, oh, I just conk out and go to sleep. And he goes, you're exhausted. And I was like, oh. And he said, this is whatever you're doing, I don't think it's a good idea. And I said, well, what if I were to meditate and stay awake, alert, and still do all this training? Would it be okay? And he looked at me and he said, yes, yes, yes. And he's just like, next, please, just to get rid of me. And so that's what I did. I started going to meditation retreats. I started resting more, training less, meditating more. After a 2-week meditation retreat, I just did yoga, breathing, meditation every day, like three or four times, rounds and rounds and rounds of that a day. I was like shot out of a cannon. I got into this runner's high thing that lasted 3 months in my life. In my competitive world, I started competing and placing, in many events. This is early on in the triathlon days in the South Bay in California. In my internship, in my clinic, I was just like, had a level of bandwidth and capacity that I never experienced in the 4 years before I was in school, chiropractic college. And I was just like something happened to me. A lot of my friends who were triathletes learned how to meditate because they were like, whatever you're doing, are you on steroids? They thought I was doing some drug. And it was just that I was getting this deep rest and I was getting the recovery that I needed. And that just got me so blown away that I wanted to know more about the runner's high and the zone. I started reading books like The Psychic Side of Sports by Michael Murphy years ago, and all these books about these peak experiences. And I started, then I had a chance in 1986 to go to India to study Ayurveda, where at least I had a 6-week vacation, and my sister was living there, and she said, why don't you come? You can stay at my place and you can go try to learn Ayurveda. I was like, cool, I'm on it. So I went. I ended up meeting an Ayurvedic doctor there. Like the second day I was there, they invited me to stay permanently, which I did for like a year and a half. That's where I met Deepak Chopra. And after a year and a half, came back and kind of co-directed his center for 8 years. And I started teaching medical doctors. And that was his gig at that time. So I started teaching medical doctors, and it became really clear that the chiropractor teaching weird Ayurvedic medicine to medical doctors needed a little help. And the help was modern science. So I started putting together the ancient wisdom and the modern science way back this was 1986, and I started putting those together. And that's what I've been doing ever since, is taking this ancient wisdom, which is like phenomenal because there's so much science behind it that nobody even knows it is out there. And from my perspective, if you can take something that's been around as a medical practice for thousands of years and still around today and has modern science to back it up, gosh, I think we should at least look at that. Because modern science alone, right? Coffee can be good, coffee can be bad, soy, wheat, dairy, you name it. I can give you science on both sides of that aisle. People don't know, should I be a carnivore or a vegan? People are so confused. But if you have time-tested wisdom, 5,000 years old in modern science, I think that's worth taking a look at. And that's what I do.
I think that is fascinating to combine the two in terms of the research and the wisdom, because people are confused. I absolutely agree. My background, of course, Chinese medicine, but I find that there's a lot of overlap when you really get down to the nitty gritty between Ayurveda and Chinese medicine. And I kind of feel it probably evolved somewhat at the same time, just two different locations in, the world. What it seems is so many people, so many people, but so many things are explained really well by the simple principles of these types of energetic and balance methods. Sometimes it's almost too simple. I don't know if you found that. You're like, hot or cold, or some type of constitutional thing. And explains a lot for bases of why someone might have some certain condition or why they're prone to something.
I love that. And that's why you don't have to memorize anything, because Ayurveda and Chinese medicine are sort of like, Ayurveda means the science of life. So it's sort of like really studying nature and understanding how seasons change and the microbes in the soil change. And we have a constitution that kind of employs some of those governing principles in nature, like winter, which is cold. We call it vata, or air-based. And there's people who are really cold all the time. They have a lot of winter qualities in their constitution. And there's other people who are very fiery and competitive and driven, and summer qualities, we call that pitta. And they're the ones throwing off the covers, never wear a jacket or a hat. And the vata, winter types are always bundling up, right? So we are basically, we mimic and have those same governing principles inside of us that we see in our seasons, in the times of day that change. There's an incredible understanding of circadian rhythms now and seasonal changes and how we're so disconnected from those rhythms. And Ayurveda, and probably Chinese medicine too, were systems to help get us back into rhythm. So the body is going with the current versus against it. And we've done a bang up job going against it in our culture. And what I love about Chinese medicine and Ayurveda too, and this is kind of my take on what makes them different, is they are designed to help the body do the job, to restore function of the body so the body can heal itself. And that is a huge place to start. If that doesn't work, well, then maybe we use some naturopathic or functional medicine approaches where we'll use a natural laxative or a bioidentical hormone or digestive enzymes to help do the job for the body to get it back into balance as a natural medicine. And a medicine means get on it, get better, get off, which has completely changed in our culture now. People are on medicines lifelong, which is really a bad idea. And then if that doesn't work, you can go to Western medicine and they're going to give you a drug or a surgery and do the job for you at any cost. But sometimes that's what we need as well. And it's like 3 buffets, right? And I think the buffet you want to start with is the one that's going to get us to do the job for ourselves so we don't become dependent on a pill or a powder or a drug or anything like that down the road. And that's kind of where I think you and I live, is this kind of Ayurvedic Chinese world where we're trying to get the body back into balance so it can function on its own. And that means getting in harmony with nature, living downstream with the current, reset biological clocks with nature's circadian rhythms. When that happens, a lot of good things happen.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One of the things that you mentioned, and it's something that I keep trying to, reiterate on the podcast and with my clients as well, is the balance in the body. Because I think we've kind of got even away from why do we get sick? We've gone all these pathways of killing Lyme and going down mold and, you're going down these rabbit holes of chronic illness. And unfortunately, we have to think about where did this start? What was the imbalance in the first place? What's out of balance? And could we maybe put that balance back? And then we're not dealing with all of these chronic issues that can happen. What's your take on all the long, viruses like Epstein-Barr and Lyme and all that kind of stuff? What's your thought process there?
Well, from the Ayurvedic perspective, 85% of all disease starts in your digestive system, right? So if you want to, and there was a study done that showed if you don't digest your protein and your fats properly. Okay, so what are those? Your proteins are the gluten, the dairy, the nuts, the seeds, the beans, the lectins, the anti-nutrients, the nightshades, the goitrogens, the oxalates, everything that everybody's telling us not to eat because they're hard to digest. If you don't digest them well, they will go incompletely digested into your intestinal tract. If you don't digest the fats well, good fats and bad fats, there's 70 million tons of toxic chemicals dumped in our atmosphere every year, according to the EPA. They filter down into the air we breathe, water we drink, and food we eat, right? So those are bad fats. We have to break them down and detoxify them. And we have the ability to do that, believe it or not, if digestion is strong. But if digestion is weak, the proteins and fats go into your intestinal tract. And this is a quote from the medical journal. Those proteins and fats will be too big as a molecule, because they're not broken down, to get into your blood and nourish you or be detoxified properly. And they'll get uptaken into the garbage can, which is the collecting ducts of your lymphatic system. Your lymphatic system, most of it, the lion's share of it, lines your intestinal tract, and that's called your gut immunity. 70% of your immune response is right there. And the lymph is also trying to take out the trash, the garbage, trying to carry your immune system and deliver fat as baseline energy to every cell of your body. So things like Epstein-Barr, chronic fatigue, viruses penetrate through either the respiratory mucosa or the intestinal mucosa. And if you don't have a good lymphatic function around those tissues, then you're going to have an immune event because that's where your immune system lives. And if your immune system is compromised because you didn't digest properly, because all the trash, undigested proteins and fats are clogging up the lymph and creating a big problem there, you're going to have a more vulnerable experience with immune events. So when you take out all the hard to digest foods, because we don't digest them well, because we have lousy digestion in America, that's why we're dependent on digestive enzymes to do the job for us, then the proteins and fats are going to go into your intestinal tract, into your lymph, and create potentially a vulnerability in your gut immunity. What's really amazing is those harder to digest foods that everybody's saying don't eat, don't eat, don't eat, because you feel bad when you eat them. And if you feel bad eating something, of course, don't eat it. But that didn't solve the problem. All that did was take the issue, the symptomatic issue away. Let's now identify what part of your digestive system is broken and fix that, because your digestive strength and your immune strength and your ability to detoxify are all linked together. They're the same system. So those hard to digest proteins provide a hormesis, a little bit of irritation on the lining of your gut. And that is why we have gut immunity, 70% of your immune response. And the gut immunity is bidirectionally linked to respiratory immunity. So there's our two places we become vulnerable to viral infections. So if you take all those hard to digest foods that create just enough irritation to give us an immune response, we become vulnerable in terms of an immune event. There was a crazy study, real quick, with Amish kids. And Amish kids, which are traditional farmers, the kids run around barefoot in the barns, they have cows as pets, and they have the lowest rates of asthma on the planet. Their genetic cousins who came from the same valley in Switzerland came here called the Hutterites, and they became sterile modern farmers, dairy farmers. And those kids had the highest rates of asthma on the planet. Like, it doesn't make any sense, right? Same genetic pool. So they measured the dust in the barns of the Amish kids, and they found that the dust was creating just enough hormetic irritation of the respiratory mucosa to trigger an immune response against asthma. They have the lowest rates of asthma on the planet. Point being, we take out the dairy, the nuts, the seeds, the grains, the legumes, the nightshades, the beans, the rice, which we are hearing nothing. Eat meat and vegetables, and that's all you should eat. It's like we are feeling better because we've taken everything hard to digest out of the diet, but we become more vulnerable to the environmental pollutants, the toxins. We're not detoxifying well, we're not digesting well, we're not delivering the nutrients well. And our lymph system, which is the most vulnerable piece of the puzzle in Ayurveda, it's the system linked to longevity. And if that system's compromised because you didn't digest your food well, you're going to pay those prices, as you said, Epstein-Barr, all that. And that's where it comes from. So yeah, treat the virus the best you can if you get one. But boy, go upstream and get to the upstream cause. That's the key.
Such valuable information there. I think a lot of people, have heard the treat the gut, and then it turns into do the AIP program, or like you said, carnivore, or go into just meat and veggies. And I find that a lot of people, when they do that, they'll come back and go, now I'm more sensitive. I can't eat. I go to a restaurant and now my system pops off. And I've done this to myself because, of course, as a naturopath, we're known for elimination diets and all that kind of stuff. And one of the biggest places that I see this being a huge detriment is in midlife, because women are noticing like their metabolism is changing, men too. And then it starts to become, what do I take out? What do I need to remove? What do I need to do? So I'd love to hear your thought process on moving into midlife, whether it's andropause, whether it's menopause, whether it's, this transition, and how to keep the metabolism going, how to keep the lymphatic system going. Where do we start? Do we start looking at what is our constitution? What are we presenting with? Give us the scoop.
I mean, there's so much there because,
Yes.
Let's start from the beginning. And this is something that is a little bit controversial to talk about, but in Ayurvedic medicine and maybe in Chinese medicine. And this just happened to my daughter. She's a college track runner, right? And she, it's hot. Well, the day before, it was 104 degrees here. And she just started her period. And she was feeling like really, she went to her work and she came back. I'm super tired. My period just started. And she said, I want to go take a nap. I said, great, that's perfect. Just go rest. And then like 4 hours later, she comes back. She's all ready to go to the track. I'm going like, what are you doing? She goes, I'm going to the track. I go, you're menstruating. And she goes, yeah, but I got to go to the track. And, they're just addicted. And so she's really stubborn, so it's hard to sometimes, tell her. I said, okay, go, whatever. And then she came back. That was yesterday. And then yesterday she went to work again, came back, and she said, like, I feel achy, I feel sick, I feel so tired. I think I have West Nile virus is like happening in our little town here. It's like, I think I have West Nile and all this stuff. And I'm going, so in Ayurvedic medicine, the idea is that when you're menstruating, the energy is all going down. And it's a time when the body is designed to be more introspective and to develop like intuition and women's intuition and really pull back the bow and become more self-aware. And during that period of time where the body is going within, it's a power surge. It's a really important time. And if you exercise or stimulate then you're just taking the energy, which is going down for really healthy reproductive function. It'll be keeping the biological clocks for reproduction in sync with the circadian rhythms. They're getting pulled up to go run on a track at 104 degrees. You know what I mean? And then that body has to borrow from Peter to pay Paul to give the energy to go run the track. And then that becomes depleted, where if you let the body just take a little bit of time. When I was, years and years ago, Martina Navratilova and Billie Jean King, who wrote the foreword to one of my books, they would come for Ayurvedic detoxification when I had an Ayurvedic detox clinic. And Martina told me, she said, whenever I would go to a tournament and I had my menstrual cycle, she was like, it ain't gonna happen. Like, I'm not gonna, I just know I don't have the juice to just win this tournament the way I would when I was, not cycling. And it's just a thing. And if you just respect that time, if you don't have to go to the track for 104 degrees, don't go. Don't schedule a marathon during that time. Schedule lighter duty, read a book, go in within, meditate more. There's cycles in nature of rest and activity. Winter is a resting, dormant cycle in nature. And summer, very active, longer days. We are part of those rhythms. So during the menstrual cycle, don't schedule extra stuff during that period of your month. Just see if you can dial it down a little bit and meditate more and read more and rest more, those kind of things. Simple, because that sets up a rhythm of not borrowing Peter to pay Paul for a whole lifetime. So by the time you get to, midlife, where you start to transition, you're not going into that with no gas in your tank. So that's the first piece of the puzzle. And I get a lot of time, years ago when I first started talking about that, women would say, no, you're telling us that women aren't as good and not as strong. It's not, I think women, I just came back from Utah, spending a week at a ranch in the ancient Canyon of the Ancients, where in the Pueblo ruins and all that, and talking to a lot of Navajo. And that's a matriarchal society. And I was like, I think that's who should run this world. There's women, because they're not going to kill everybody. I mean, I just think it's so crazy we have men running the show here. It's stupid. And so I am such a big fan of that. And I don't think that having a menstrual cycle and taking a little time off is a weakness. I think it's pulling back the bow to become more self-aware so they can govern from deep within, from the science within, versus all the stimulation that we kind of live and breathe by from the outside world. If that makes any sense.
Makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense. I'm kind of glad you're saying it, because it's kind of like, when mom says something, we just need somebody outside to say it again, because the biggest thing I see, and I'm guilty of it myself, being, into heavy weightlifting, running, biking, all the things too. I pushed myself for years. And living, we kind of briefly mentioned Colorado, and living in Colorado, it's one of those things, or anywhere where folks are very fit, you feel like you have to compete with everyone else, especially when I lived in Breckenridge. When I had a 7-month pregnant neighbor running past me faster, I'm like, I'm going faster. It's you feel that drive. And I think a lot of people feel that drive to keep competing, keep going, do those things. And we unfortunately pay the price when we start going into perimenopause and menopause, because like you said, the tanks are depleted. The adrenals are depleted incredibly. And that's one side of it. And for a lot of folks that aren't athletes or former athletes, the other tank depletion is stress, and stress on the body. And I'm very curious as to how in Ayurvedic medicine, meditation, we've got the other types of yoga, different body groups. What about in terms of food? What about in terms of other lifestyle things? What does Ayurveda say about the vagus nerve and those kind of things, nervous system balancing? What kind of stuff?
Well, when you look at 85% of the imbalances caused by digestion, and then you go, okay, what screws up digestion? Well, it's stress. They talked about thousands of years ago that the seat of the nervous system was your intestinal tract. They said that 5,000 years ago. And now research has shown that it produces like 95% of your serotonin, your gut does. All the neurotransmitters are produced there. They call it the second brain. There's more neurons in your gut than in your brain. And all this research has now come out that this intestinal tract, with all the microbes that are doing most of the thinking and craving and desiring for us, is in your gut. And that is going to live or die based on the quality, integrity, and strength of your digestive system, right? So that's where that rubber meets the road. And then you take pranayama breathing techniques, an Ayurvedic tool, right? And boy, what people don't realize is that your diaphragm, the most important muscle in your body, You can't put a dumbbell on it and make it stronger. There was a recent study with elite athletes, and 91% of them athletes did not have a diaphragm relaxing and contracting fully. And therefore, none of us do. And the diaphragm isn't just a breathing muscle, which is so critical. It's the number one pump for your entire lymphatic system. Nobody knows that. They don't tell you that. I was coming out of a restaurant about a year ago, and as I was coming into the restaurant, these elderly folks were coming out of the restaurant. They were like in their late 80s or 90s, and they were all very frail, mouths open, breathing really shallow. I was helping them get out of the restaurant. And I looked, I was like, God, I wish someone would have told them that, and here's science behind what I'm going to say right now, that if someone would have told them they could breathe 5 minutes a day and prevent and even reverse the heartburn, the GERD, and the reflux, because strengthening your diaphragm breathing techniques in Western medicine called maximum inspiratory breathing techniques, which strengthen your diaphragm, have been shown in about 15 studies to reverse your heartburn, GERD, reflux, and indigestion. Does your doctor ever tell you that? There's studies that show you can breathe away your heartburn? No. They just give you a pill, which makes things worse, really, ultimately. Studies show that when you breathe 5 minutes a day, strengthen your diaphragm, it can reverse your blood pressure just as good as the medication within 3 minutes. Studies show that diaphragm, when you strengthen it, pumps the lymphatic system, the cerebrospinal fluid, in and out of your brain and reverses and protects you from cognitive decline, because the diaphragm is the pump of the brain, lymph, and lymphatic systems, which dump out 3 pounds of trash out of your head, your brain, every year. And if this brain can't take the trash out, studies now show, and this is only since about 15 years ago, 17, 18 years ago, I guess now, that they discovered this at the University of Virginia. But Ayurveda's been talking about brain lymphatic congestion for thousands of years. And they've linked it now, congestion of the brain lymph, which is connected to your diaphragm, inability to breathe, to anxiety, depression, cognitive decline, inflammation, infection, autoimmunity, poor sleep, and that's just the short list. So it's like, wow, we have to do this pranayama. We have to learn how to breathe. We have to practice and keep strengthening the diaphragm, because your rib cage has one job in life: squeeze all the air out, right? And if your diaphragm gets weaker because we're sitting and slouching and pushing the rib cage into the diaphragm, pushing it into a downward pre-contracted position so it really can't hardly ever, while you're in your car, on your couch, on your desk, at your computer, can't contract fully, it ain't gonna over time. The rib cage will win this war, and you'll start breathing really shallow, and it just goes worse. It gets worse because the upper chest is the fight or flight receptor. So now we're telling the body with every breath, 20,000 breaths per day, your life's an emergency, right? Now that's like all we really need on top of all the incoming stress in our life. And then we do this crazy thing called over breathing, which research shows that people who shallow breathe, and most of us do, don't even know it. 75% of the oxygen they're breathing in, they breathe it right back out unused. We're so wasteful. And as a result of that, the oxygen in your blood, when you put the thing on your finger, the oximeter on your finger, and they say, oh, you've got 98% saturation, Miss Jones, you're fine. But that's just how much, that's because you're trying to jam all this oxygen the body can't take anymore. And what happens is your oxygen goes high. Because you're shallow breathing, you're breathing off all the CO2, so your oxygen goes high, CO2 goes low. And that is the perfect storm for anxiety, which is exactly why when people have an anxiety attack, what do? Put a paper bag over their mouth, they rebreathe their carbon dioxide, CO2 levels come up, and they get calm. And because we have lost diaphragmatic function, we slowly are, and all the incoming stress in our culture, we keep telling the body life's an emergency. We breathe in a way that tells the body life's an emergency. And that incoming stress, to answer your question, sorry to take so long, but the incoming stress is exactly what causes all of the metabolic syndrome issues and even linked to digestive issues. I wrote an article about this because I was so frustrated because I have all these, and you must have this too, right? So many healthy patients that come in and they go to the doctor and they got high cholesterol, they got high blood sugar, they need to go on a statin, all this stuff, right? And I said, well, let's look at stress impacting those. So if you're under chronic stress, the rev, the stimulation, the go, I was even thinking the other day, like, when in the history of the world did human beings go 60 miles an hour every day of their life? Like, we're just moving through space and time faster than we ever did before. This on the car, the driving, go here, go there. We all know it's just way too much incoming compared to like where I just came from in Utah, the stillness and the calm of these native people, like, no, it is such a different culture. And so if you're under that kind of stress, what is your body going to do? It's going to try to dump as much sugar in your blood to give you more energy to get up a tree to save your life because this emergency doesn't end. It's going to put more cholesterol into your blood because cholesterol is what's used to make stress-fighting hormone, which you desperately need because you're telling your body, life's an emergency. It's going to raise your blood pressure, right, to get up a tree. It's going to tell you any extra fuel I can find, I'm going to put it under the mattress around my belly so I have some reserve fuel in case this war never ends. I mean, that chronic stress has been directly linked to every aspect of all the epidemics of our time. And then I said, well, what if we did meditation, looked at research on meditation, like a stress reduction technique, and study after study, meditation lowers cholesterol, lowers, abdominal obesity and blood pressure and blood sugar. Is like, yeah, it's not a deficiency in a pill or a powder or even an herb or definitely not a statin. We have to take steps to kind of dialing down the incoming and pull back the bow and become calm. When I say pull back the bow, what I mean is that if you pull back the bow and you're moving it like this, all over like this, and you shoot it, you're never going to find the arrow. But if I pull back the bow and hold it perfectly still and then take action from that calm place, in Ayurveda, this is called transformational. Like, it's such an important place to start functioning from that inner experience of calm, that deep kind of reservoir of stillness and love and kindness inside of all of us. And that's really like the message. Yoga, breathing, meditation gives you access to that calm. So you're not just getting all your satisfaction from this outside world of, I'm happy if I get a new car, or I get a new dress, or new this or new that, or food or restaurants or movies and all this stuff from the outside stimulating us, which never does really. Ayurveda and Chinese medicine is like, wait, there's a deeper side to this. And if we make the lake really calm, you can see the bottom. And then you can look and see what the body can become more self-aware, recognize problems as problems, and elicit a natural healing response. So that's why all this research shows, meditation, stress reduction is so critical, but tying that with a lifestyle that's going with the current, biological clocks and rhythms being in sync, that's game changing.
Thinking of a couple different things. One, this is exactly kind of where I've come to with my practice. I've kind of come full circle. When I got out, it was like, yes, I'm going to do all of the restorative stuff. We're going to work on breathing. We're going to work on all these things. And then I learned that society is very still looking for a magic pill or the one thing or the one magical thing. And I've kind of gotten to the point now, of course, I'm back to where my beginnings came from, just like what you're describing on it's a lifestyle. We have to recognize that Ayurvedic lifestyle, right? Chinese medicine lifestyle. I don't care which way people go on any of these things, more that it's the recognition that this is a lifestyle. We incorporate these things in, and there isn't going to be just one magical thing. You're mentioning meditation, you're mentioning breathing, we're putting things together. Now, the other big thing that folks are always asking me, and you already kind of alluded to it earlier, is, Doc, what do I eat, right? And how do I eat? And you had mentioned your cleanse, and I saw the Colorado Ayurvedic cleanse on your website. Do you feel like when someone's starting to work with balancing their body, that a cleanse is something you want to start with first? Or do you want to start with the balancing foods and learning about your constitution and figuring out what works best for you in that department?
That's a really great question. I think it depends on just where the individual is at. Sometimes people just feel really toxic and their digestion is sort of really weak, and they can tell, I'm bloated, I've got extra weight around my belly, I've got indigestion, I've got heartburn. And changing the lifestyle probably is not going to be, have the oomph required to really bring that back into balance, where a cleanse might be something where I say, I just want to take 2 weeks and just reset, and that's what our Colorado Ayurvedic cleanse is. We also have a 4-day short home cleanse, which is a 4-day, which is a really good way to get started, where you just do a 4-day cleanse. And that's an ebook that's free. All you do is type in the short home cleanse on my website, and you get a free ebook, tells you everything that you can do. It even gives you, we have obviously herbs that you can take with it and a kit you can get, but would also give you herbs you can buy at your local grocery store or health food store. So you don't have to buy anything from us. You get the ebook for free. So it's kind of really clean in that way. The Colorado cleanse is a little bit more elaborate for sure. And there's a book, an ebook for that as well. That's a 14-day digestive reset, lymph cleanse, liver cleanse, intestinal skin repair, change your microbiome. It's an overhaul. That's why it takes 2 weeks for that to happen. So that's a really beautiful way to go. And some people are really ready for that, and they really want to do that. And I've been doing that cleanse, gosh, for decades, and the results are phenomenal. I mean, people who can't eat wheat can all of a sudden eat wheat. The average person loses between 15 to 17 pounds. I mean, it's just like amazing reset, because you're not just giving them a cleanse, you're actually asking why they got toxic in the first place, which is to actually reset every aspect of digestion. And then the cleansing part, the idea is that you take a little bit of ghee every morning, or olive oil, it could be, if you don't like ghee, and you take a little bit more every day, while you're eating a no-fat diet. And this is what's called lipophilic mediated detox. Western medicine coined that phrase because they use fats to chelate or attach to bad fats in your deep tissues and pull them out of your body. And studies show that when you do this, consuming ghee every day, it's been shown to reduce the PCBs, which were toxins, forever chemicals banned in the 1990s, but still here today, out of your body by 46%. And they've reduced pesticides out of your deep tissues by 56% compared to the folks who didn't do the cleanse. So we have really good science shows not only going to detoxify you and get the stuff out of your fat, which is good, like your brain tissue, which is fat, but more importantly, it's like, why did I get it? Why did my body not detoxify that on its own? Because your digestion broke down. So we do an upper digestive reset, lymph cleanse, liver cleanse. We do all that in intestinal skin repair. So you fix the reason why, so you don't just go back and get toxic again. You reset function. That's what makes them different.
That's awesome. Because I'm not aware really of any detoxes that you fix things. It's really, if we look online at it's like colon blows, basically, for lack of a better term, and really, is that doing anything but depleting you? Probably not. And in a lot of cases, that's kind of where I see people coming into me, especially with women, because they're going to hear 15 to 17 pounds, that what you just said in terms of weight loss. And a lot of people right now, as you already, I'm sure, are aware, are grasping for the GLP-1 injections to try to get the weight off. And while some people, have I prescribed them? Yes, because some people it's necessary. But at the same time, I'm looking at it in my head. Also, I guess there's a little battle because I know that the body can heal itself, right? I know that, but some people are not at that stage. And just hearing you say that you could go through a cleanse, lose that weight, and be able to keep it off because the body's corrected and balances. I mean, this is a gold mine for a lot of people to learn about right here.
It's so logical, really. And that's what you remember you talked at the very beginning, like you don't have to memorize. It's easy. It's overly simple. But when you think about cleansing, does it make any sense to just clean your intestinal tract out and then never asking the question, why did that intestinal tract get so toxic in the first place? Where did the good microbes go and why did they leave? There was this back in 2000, I think 2004, when they created the first microbiome project. They gave us 2 warnings. And the first warning was eat dirt, kind of like don't sterilize everything, right? So it talked about something called horizontal transfer of genetic material, which means that my wife and I have 6 kids, right? So we've transferred our genetic material to our kids vertically. Horizontally means like I come to a room and I sit next to you and all of a sudden you grab my genetic material that you want to help do something. Well, inside your gut, if you have a bacteria that has the ability to get through the intestinal wall and a virus happens to come next to that, it can transfer that genetic material that it needs to get through your intestinal lining. That's called the horizontal transfer of genetic material. And the really cool thing, what they said was, way back in 2004 when they first discovered this, they said why that happens isn't based on proximity, that they just happen to bump up next to each other. Oh, wow, I want that. No, it was ecology, the environment of the gut. And this is like, I'm sure, Chinese medicine as well. That's what we talk about. Change the environment of the gut. Let the good bugs flourish so they can fight the battle of the bad bugs and actually win that war. And they said that, interestingly, way back then, that the most horizontal transfer of genetic material that could be bad for us happens through farm animal exposure. And now we're looking at bird flu kind of taking over in a way that is really not being addressed right now very well in our country. And it's kind of a real big deal. So This was all the warnings that were done way back then, and we just didn't listen to any of that. It's the ecology. And this is what these cleanses are about, is restoring function, healing the environment, changing the gut lining, supporting a healthy and more diverse microbiome. And we've got research to prove that that can actually happen during these cleanses, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. Now, question I have, talking about farm animals, talking about that. In this cleanse, is it taking out all of the meats? Is it going completely vegan throughout this cleanse? Are we taking out?
Yes and no. There's 3 phases to the Colorado cleanse. The first phase is a kind of a digestive reset where you really clean your diet. You do get off all the allergenic foods, which are like fish and nuts and dairy and wheat, not because they're bad, because they're harder to digest. And we're going to let the body take the stress off the system and reboot it. Like when you have a car as a flat tire, you put a jack under it, and then you can take the tire and put a new one back on. That's what we're going to do during this cleanse. We're going to make it easy on your digestion for 2 weeks, and then restore function, and then bring those foods back. However, during the middle of the cleanse, when you're actually doing the ghee, when you do like ghee every morning, there's 3 dietary plans. There's just rice and beans, or what's called khichdi only, which is a special type of Ayurvedic superfood that you would eat that's been eaten for thousands of years. It was baby food. They would give it for elderly folks when they were in the hospital. And now in America, people can't even eat rice and beans. This is how far this rice and beans, you take rice and beans out of the diet of the planet, a lot of people die. I mean, still to this day, the vast majority of our planet lives on rice and beans. And now in America, so many folks can't eat rice and beans anymore. It's amazing. So the Ayurvedic one has got spices in it to make it really digestible. And then that's the first plan. And then the second plan is that with vegetables, cooked vegetables. And if that is even still hard for you to do for 7 days, then we have rice, beans, vegetables, soup, salad, fruit, and even lean meat if you need it, but no added fat. Because the goal is you have all your fat in the morning, the ghee in the morning, that flips you into fat metabolism because you got to digest what you just ate. And if you eat fat during the day, you're just going to digest the fat that you just ate. But if you have no fat, it'll keep you in fat burning all day long, and you start pulling the fat out of your fat cells, reset your ability to burn fat. All of a sudden you get calm, and within 3 days, your appetite goes away. You're like, I don't even really feel like I need to eat today. Like you're in that kind of fasted, fat burning state, but you're eating. And it's very similar to the Dr. Walter Longo's fasting mimicking diet, where he showed that this kind of protocol increases stem cell activation, which is kind of really cool as well. So it's well studied, well understood, thousands of years. It was created thousands of years ago, and now there's all this really amazing science to back it up.
Fascinating stuff. Because I never would have thought about eating fat just in the morning and then not the rest of the day, and seeing how that has an impact on the body. So I think that'll be interesting for a lot of folks to look into.
The bulletproof coffee, that whole thing is sort of based on that. Put butter in your coffee, right? That slows down the delivery of the caffeine, so you actually feel stable throughout the day, so you can eat less and calorie restrict more easily.
I think all these concepts, we've kind of maybe Americanized them a little bit, because we'll think like, okay, that's a great way to get the day started. But then people will be, let's face it, you probably heard it too. Then from there, people are like, well, fats are good, so I'm going to eat a lot of nuts and seeds. And I'm talking about myself even. I'm part squirrel, I'm convinced. And so, then you eat all like macadamia nuts, right? We pound that in, and then we eat some like grass-fed beef that's not a lean cut, and it compounds throughout the day. And I think a lot of people are thinking that way because they're thinking, this is a way to do it. Or the other thing that a lot of folks will do is do the bulletproof coffee and not eat till later in the evening, and then pound a bunch of food. It's kind of like the 1 meal a day, gorge yourself situation, which seems to not work out so well for a lot of women in particular. I'm guessing you've seen that too.
Yeah. So there's study after study after study now. There's no question that breakfast is a very important meal of the day to kickstart your metabolism. Studies show that people who have a breakfast and lunch, or a lunch and a dinner, same food, same calories, people who have the breakfast and lunch lose significantly more weight. Their metabolic health, blood pressure, blood sugar, all that is significantly better than people who eat the food in the second half of the day. And there's just no question about that. Although I get it. If you breakfast, and then you can have it's more socially acceptable, have a dinner together with your family, and that makes it a little bit easier than skipping, than basically just eating breakfast and lunch and having no dinner. But the word dinner came from the word supper or supplemental. It always meant sup, a very small, early meal, just to take the edge off so you can get to bed and burn fat throughout the night. The idea of the carnivore diet and all these extreme diets, I wrote a book called The 3-Season Diet, which is eating according to nature. And there's 3 harvests in nature. There's a spring harvest, a summer harvest, and a fall harvest for winter eating. Winter takes a break. So there's 3 active seasons we interact with. And what you can do is go to my website. There's grocery lists for winter, summer, and spring. Circle the food on this you like. Eat more of the foods on this that you like. The ones with the asterisks are the superfood for that season. You can eat whatever you want, but try to get medicinal doses of what nature is intending for you to have during this season. Why? Because the bugs in the soil in the spring are different than the bugs in the soil in the summer. And that means the foods that we eat have the right bugs for the right season. And studies have shown this, that, the bugs in the winter will boost your immunity. That's what they do, so you don't get the flu. The bugs in the spring will decongest you so you don't get allergies. The bugs that are on the foods in the summer will dissipate heat so you can handle the heat of the summer better. What we do is we take the food and we spray pesticides or insecticides and sterilize them. And then when we eat them, they don't have a microbiome. And if I took the microbiome out of you or me, we would be totally different, really a mess, right? So we do the same thing with our herbs. We take our herbs, we say, I'm going to take curcumin, which is the more potent version of turmeric, right? And I'm going to soak it in alcohol and sterilize it, take one of the 300 constituents out, and I'm going to take that as a medicine. Well, that is a medicine, and medicines have side effects. Guaranteed, well studied. So what Ayurveda would say, well, why don't we use all 300 of the constituents of the turmeric plant and take it in its whole form with all its natural occurring microbes in it. And now you have the intelligence of the plant, its microbiome, and the biochemistry of the plant, and you put them together. You have something that will help restore function of us so we don't end up, using something that does a job for us and then creates a dependency and even side effects. And that's the beauty of whole herbs, is you're getting an inoculation of the right bugs for the right condition or even the right season. You can take the herb seasonally as well. And now you're not overruling the body's intelligence. You're restoring function so you can get on, get better, get off, and really be healthy and inoculate our gut with the right bugs. Because the problem is, I buy organic spinach and it comes in a little plastic container that was probably grown on a conveyor belt somewhere. Or left thrown. It's just so processed, even though it's organic, in the same soil again and again and again. You think, okay, it wasn't sprayed, but how many microbes are really in this? There was a study in Utah and Arizona, and they went into a museum and they took mummies that were 1,000 years old and they measured their microbiome. They could figure out how to do that. And they compared it to modern humans. And us modern humans had such a lack of microbial diversity that this Stanford study concluded that this is an extinction event. So our lack of microbial diversity, and that's why we have a whole herb line. I take my herbs regularly, seasonally, because I want the bugs. And I'll tell you a story about turmeric. We import our herbs organic from organic farms from India, and we have to test them as soon as we get them. Okay. So we tested the turmeric. It was fine. We mix it 16 parts turmeric, 1 part black pepper. That increases the absorption of the turmeric by 2,000%. So when you take your turmeric and make your spicing at home, 16 to 1 turmeric to black pepper, crazy absorption benefit. So we did that, and we had it. Then we make the capsule, and then we have to get everything tested again after the product is done. This is according to FDA standards. Not everybody does this. It's very important that you know that when you buy herbs, that the GMP FDA laboratory certification needs to be there, because they were tested twice. Then my guy calls me up and he goes, we made the capsules, we retested, and the microbes are off the charts. He goes, it's still within the legal limit, and there's all these amazingly good bacteria. He goes, your product is a probiotic, in addition to the turmeric that you want to get delivered. And I go, that's the beauty of Ayurveda when you combine herbs the way they did for thousands of years. And how they knew all this, I have no idea. You create something that's not just, curcumin, which is going to actually maybe help cure your breast cancer and colon cancer, which is really cool. But studies show it'll block stem cells, and it can be toxic. There's study after study showing there's side effects to that. But it's a medicine, so it can do something really important for you as a medicine, and that's why medicines are so cool. But you get on that, get better, get off. You don't stay on that forever. But the turmeric, 16-to-1 turmeric with all the good bugs in there, you can take that for the rest of your life. You know what I mean? I would probably take it spring and fall because that's when they're harvested. So you just take it at the right season, get the right bugs at the right time, and it becomes like even way more cool to keep inoculating your gut and getting your body more in line with the natural cycles of nature.
That's neat. Never, I mean, I guess I thought about it, but I didn't think about it in terms of herbs encapsulated and being probiotic benefit. I think about it in terms of the food I grow and getting my beneficial bacteria from them and things of that nature. But that's a whole nother level because, probiotics, I'm going to be honest, it's kind of controversial as to, are they doing the things? I kind of feel like I'd rather have my beneficial bacteria from the foods I eat versus the bugs, taking dead bugs, really.
Well, there's so much more diversity. When you take foods that come, herbs or plants that come out of the ground, every plant, every herb has a different affinity for a different kind of species of bug. So every plant has its own microbiome. So when you have different, and the food we eat is sort of like the same again and again and again. So those herbs, and like in my mind, when I take, Manjista and Brahmi and different herbs like Bacopa for my brain, so my brain stays good, they have bugs in it that are inoculating my gut with a level of diversity that I'm just not going to get in the foods that we eat. You know what I mean? And that's kind of, I think, a really cool side benefit is keeping that diversity alive and well.
Huge. It's so huge. Now, one of the last things I kind of want to go through, and then of course we got to talk about Life Spa and the quiz. And this will lead into the quiz nicely because a lot of people will say to me, I've read the books on Ayurvedic medicine. I've read the books on Chinese medicine. It's so complicated. I can't juggle what I need from my body when. And of course, you've got your quiz that helps us to figure out, like, where am I possibly out of balance? Where is my constitution at? And of course, I took the quiz before this because I wanted to be able to use myself as the guinea pig for folks here so that you guys can all kind of hear what was up, because I took the Ayurvedic body quiz on John's website there at lifespa.com. And it talks about the winter, the summer, and the spring. So Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. And maybe some of you folks have heard about that. And what I found was that I was kind of across the board, but I have the predominant is summer, the Pitta, and I have some Kapha, and I have a little bit of the Vata. I'm much less on the Vata. Dr. John, give us a little breakdown as to, like, we see the quiz and use it as a platform to be like, okay, I've got, so a number 23 was my score for the Pitta. I'm 17 for Kapha and I'm 7 for Vata. When someone looks at a quiz, how do we incorporate that information with the eating seasonal and help to keep the balance within the body?
Right. So, and this is great. When I first started reading the books, I was like, I have no idea what they're talking about. I totally get it, And then when I finally learned, I was like, oh my God, this is like so simple. Okay, we have winter, summer, spring, the 3 growing seasons. That's why I call the book the 3-season diet. Mm-hmm. By the way, people thought that I didn't know that there were 4 seasons, so nobody read that book. So what I did, you don't have to buy the book. You can go to my website, and we have something called the 3-season diet eating guide, where we put recipes and grocery lists for every month of the year for free. So you can just go on my website for free. There's 1,500 articles on all your health topics there, so you can get all that stuff for free. But the point is that we have these 3 seasons: winter, spring, and summer. Winter is called Vata, so let's just call it winter for now. You don't have very much winter, so you're not very cold, right? If you had a lot of winter, you'd be cold all the time. And like you said, you're part squirrel. And if you were a squirrel, what would you eat in the wintertime to not get cold and freeze to death? Nuts and seeds. And that would help insulate you from the coldness and dryness. So what is harvested in the winter time is going to give you the antidote to the extreme of that season. So winter's cold and dry. What does nature harvest? Nuts and seeds. And if you were living off the land, you'd have to hunt. You'd eat more animal protein and animal fat, and you would answer into the quality of the cold and dry. You wouldn't be eating cold frozen smoothies because they don't exist in the winter, and they would also make a cold person colder, right? So it's pretty simple. If you have a lot of Vata, then the one season you probably need to really eat on the straight and narrow, take the winter grocery list and eat more of the foods on this list, would be winter. If you're a winter Vata, if your winter numbers are high, but yours are not, yours are low. So you can sort of take a little bit of time off. It's not that urgent for you. Summer is Pitta, fire. You have a lot of that. So you're a hot body type. And if you're eating hot, spicy food, Mexican food, acidic food, coffee, beer, wine, cheese, all these fermented foods, kombucha, all this stuff a lot, in the summer months, you're a hot person in a hot season doing hot stuff, eating hot food, you can overheat and inflame. So nature said, I had a plan for that, but they didn't listen, which was foods in the summer are the antidote to the extreme heat of that season, cooling fruits and vegetables. So, and what's kind of cool is that the bugs in your gut in the spring are predominantly when you eat seasonally, according to the hunter-gatherer tribes, they have what are called actinobacteria, which are really good at getting their energy and their fuel from fat and fiber and protein. Come summer, the bugs in your gut change, according to the hunter-gatherer tribes, and they have what are called bacteriides. So they're going to take all that starch from the wheat that's harvested at the end of the summer and the grains and the fruits and deliver that as energy. So nature is going to give us the cooling foods in the summer, the warming foods in the winter, and in the spring, there ain't a lot coming out of the ground in the spring. It's an austere time of the year. The deer are going to dig up some deer roots, clean all the villi of your intestinal tract. It's a calorie-restricted time of the year. Your body's going to be forced to make energy on its own from the reserve fat reserve. So you're going to go into ketogenesis quite naturally during that time of the year. And you'd probably have to hunt a little bit, so it'd be a little bit higher protein, a little higher fat, or you just do fasting, which is why all the religions do their fasting in the spring. Vision quests were done in the spring because this is a time where there wasn't a lot of food to be had. It is a naturally occurring time to detoxify and calorie restrict and force the body into a natural state of fat metabolism. And that one of the simplest ways to do that is just eat significantly less carbohydrates, because if you tried to find pizza or pasta in the spring coming out of the ground, you're not going to find it. So that's a time where you just naturally go into a low carb diet. Summer is a higher carb diet, and winter is a higher protein, higher fat diet. Simple. All the diets everybody's arguing over exist in nature for 3 or 4 months of the year along the way. So we changed, which is what every human did for millions of years to stay on this planet, is we ate according to what came out of the ground.
Makes sense. I mean, it makes perfect sense. And I love, the explanation. It does simplify it quite a bit more for folks, because yes, it's I think it's the words and that you put it to the winter, the spring, and then the summer. I think it helps folks to really get that and be like, okay, I understand. And so, yeah, now I have to watch my spice that I add to my summer foods, and that's fine. I actually don't like spicy stuff, so I'll be good. And once my garden goes a little bit more, I just got to watch the tomatoes, because that's the acidic thing.
Or you could just take the skin, and peel the skin, and then the tomato. The skin is the more acidic part of that tomato. So if you're really pitta, if you really want to be, dive into the details, the inner side of that tomato can actually be cooling for you versus the outside skin. Yeah.
That's cool. I mean, I know that we can dive into the other things about the doshas and go in very deep, and this would be like a 5-hour call, because I love to pick people's brains about all the doshas. But usually the biggest question and the best place to start is the gut. And so many folks start to struggle with their metabolism as they get older. And I think this is what we're overlooking, that huge connection, gut lymphatic system, and how we move that much better. Beyond breathing, are there any other types of, and beyond yoga, are there any other types of Ayurvedic secrets that women or men could use to help with lymphatic drainage as a whole? Is there anything else Ayurveda explains, baths, herbs, things of that nature?
Well, you're so right. In Ayurveda, the word for lymphatic is rasa, and the study of rasa is called rasayana in Ayurveda. One of the major branches of Ayurveda is specifically for longevity, and it's called rasayana, which is the study of rasa, the study of the lymph. So the whole thing is about lymph. The first thing you need to understand, and that's how the body takes the trash out, right? So if your house has a toilet that's clogged, you can't put anything else in it, right? So you can't put new stuff in until you take care of the waste coming out. So the limiting factor to our health and longevity is our ability to move waste out of our body effectively. And that, of course, bowel movements are important, sweating's important, skin, but also critically is your lymphatic system, and nobody really talks about that. So there's many ways to. The hydration is a key piece of that puzzle. Lymph is like your river, and if that river's dry, you're going to be in trouble. So staying hydrated is really important, and sometimes making sure you're taking that with a little bit of salt or some electrolytes does matter, because water alone, gallons of it, isn't going to hydrate you. You do want to add something to make it more, help it penetrate the cell better. Movement and exercise. Lymph is pumped by muscular contraction. It has nothing to do with your heart. So if you're not moving, and that's why so many of the longevity experts say exercise, 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 because it's actually moving your lymph, which is helping take the trash out. And that's the critical limiting factor that nobody really talks about, the why, but that's one of the major reasons why it works so well. And then, of course, there are Ayurvedic herbs like Mangista, phenomenal herb for a lymphatic decongestion agent. We have a whole lymph kit you can get that treats every aspect of your lymphatic system, from starting in your intestinal tract to the brain lymphatic system with an herb called Brahmi or what's called Centella asiatica. So there's herbs called red root, which is an American herb that is really good for the lymph nodes, which are the lymph vessels, are carrying all the trash out of your cells. They go into lymph nodes where the white blood cells clean everything up, make sure there's no bad stuff headed back to your heart and therefore your liver, and they can get congested as well. So there's herbs have been studied to detoxify the lymph nodes, the lymph vessels, the brain lymphatic system, the intestinal lymph. It's kind of really cool. And of course, you have what's called the skin-associated lymph as well, which is when you get rashes or hives or eczema. That is your body using your skin as an exit ramp for impurities, because the regular lymphatic pathways are congested. So your skin through eczema will be sort of like, hey, I'm going to dump it out through psoriasis or whatever. And that means there's an underlying congestion in the lymphatic system. Migraine headaches are another vasodilation. Your body's trying to get trash out of the brain lymphatic system. So it's all really quite beautiful, really quite simple. It sounds complicated, but it's really that you treating your lymphatic system with dehydration, exercise, movement, green foods, berries, anything that will stain your white shirt red, black, or blue, like a pomegranate or a beet or a berry. That's going to have antioxidants in it that work specifically through your lymphatic system, and green things. So green things and red, black, and blue things, and then some of those herbs, hydration, movement. And don't forget that if you don't have good digestion, right, if you can't eat wheat, dairy, nuts, seeds, grains, beans, and you eat oxalates and you feel terrible, which is crazy because the world lived on oxalates for millions and millions of years. Now all of a sudden people can't eat them. That's not an oxalate problem. That's not the oxalate. It's not like the oxalates are the cause of this. It's a broken down digestive system. And what we do in America is, well, if you don't feel good eating that, don't eat it. And then move further and further towards a diet that feels better for you. The carnivore diet, we think, is the macho man diet, right? You got to be tough and strong and eat the bone and all that. Well, it turns out that there's no anti-nutrients on meat. It's the easiest thing for us to eat. It's medicine food in Ayurveda. Plants produce chemicals to ward off predators, and those are proteins that are anti-nutrients, so the bugs don't eat them. Plants are much harder for us to digest. This is the macho man diet, really, plant-based diet. So if you can't eat the diet that our ancestors lived on for millions of years, then you got an underlying broken digestive problem, which is going to continue to wreak havoc, behind the scenes. And I'm going to find myself feeling really good on eating, red meat and maybe white rice and some vegetables. And that is a really lacking diverse diet in terms of your microbiome, right? So it's just step by step. We have an article called the Digestive Health Quiz, where it asks you questions about every aspect of your digestion. So you can say, it's my lymph, or it's my liver, or it's my gallbladder, or it's my stomach acid being too high or too low. And that's also my book. I wrote a book called Eat Wheat. Everybody should eat wheat. It was more like people are blaming wheat on everything. And there's so much science. I have 611 studies in that book proving that wheat can be a medicine for you. And it has been for millions of years. They found gluten in the teeth of ancient humans 3.5 million years ago. So it's not the wheat. It's our inability to break things down. And glyphosate too, we can actually break it down with a strong digestion, not in massive quantities. Unfortunately, this is the world we live in, but If you have a broken down digestive system, you can't avoid the toxins, the chemicals, the environmental pollutants, the glyphosate, even if you tried. So again, we got to go back to fixing your digestion, because that gives you the resiliency and the ability to detoxify the environment that we live in and break down the harder to digest foods. You don't have to go bubble wrap your diet and start taking stuff out of your diet, eating a more kind of restricted diet, which in the long run will actually create problems. Feel better in the beginning. That's why people go on a vegan diet, they feel great, then they go, God, it's not working for me. I need something else. And I'm a big fan of a plant-based diet with 10 to 15% animal protein to make sure you don't need B12 and you don't need, your omega-3 fatty acids and all that. You can get that from that, a little bit of animal protein without taking. And I do, as we get older, I do believe we need more protein, but I'm also very squirrel-like. I like getting them from the nuts and the seeds that in a more natural form.
Yeah. I think at the end of the day, it's just kind of feeling out what feels best to you. And yes, I'm not a fan of eliminating things in long terms. Let's call it that. In long terms, and seeing when we can get it back, because we know if we can tolerate it, bringing it back in the gut is better. Gosh, so many things, and we got to talk about your website so folks can see all the resources there at lifespa.com, because you have, like you said, 1,500 articles in there. I was kind of perusing. I'm like, man, there's a lot of info here and a lot of good free resources. You've already mentioned the different shopping lists for the different seasons too, which can be incredibly helpful for folks. Tell us a little bit more about how they can work more in depth with you and your group, and how they can interact with your website beyond taking the quiz.
Yeah, well, the quiz is a great place to start because it's kind of fun and interactive. And there's other quizzes. There's a lymph quiz. You can take that lymph quiz and just type it in the search bar, and now you'll find out how well your lymph's doing. There's the digestive health quiz. There's a skin type quiz as well, so you can find out what your skin type is and what Ayurveda says to do about supporting the function of your skin versus just like putting stuff on it to make it look pretty temporarily. So there's a lot of that. But there's also, the search bar, you can just type in your health concern, constipation or indigestion or whatever it might be, or heartburn or whatever. And then our numerous articles will come up, and then you can kind of read that. The idea is that, we try to put as much knowledge out there as for free as possible so people can become self-sufficient. That's the goal at LifeSpa. That's always been my goal, and that's been our business model. And there's ebooks also that are there. You can go, there's digestive ebooks, there's lymphatic ebooks that can take a deeper dive. If you want to go, instead of looking at article after article after article, you can go to the ebook and get more that way. What else? We have a podcast as well, so that's something you could look at for deeper information. Of course, we have an Ayurvedic store, and I've formulated Ayurvedic herbs I've been doing this for 41 years now. And so we have an Ayurvedic pharmacy that are all the whole herbs that we talked about and the benefit of that. And you can check that out at lifespa.com, and there's a store link there as well. And of
Awesome
course, we have
stuff.
a newsletter. We have a newsletter, and people can sign up for that. And then you can find out, that's like the main thing, actually. You can find out about courses we're producing and new articles that are coming out and all the new stuff that's coming out, because I'm constantly digging into the ancient wisdom and modern science, and there's so much unbelievably more information that just keeps coming, which I thought at some point there'd be nothing to write about, but Ayurveda is incredibly vast, so it's pretty cool.
That's what I love about it. And I saw that you also have some events too, and one in the Bahamas, I think, next year, and some things there too, so folks can interact with you in person as well.
Yeah, for sure. You can go on the website and just look at our events page and see everything that's coming up, courses that I'm teaching and events and so on. Yeah, for sure.
Very cool. Very cool. Gosh, Dr. John, so much information here.
Yeah, absolutely. And don't forget, the breathing is, the diaphragm is the pump for your lymphatic system, and cellulite is a lymphatic congestive issue linked to digestion and lymph. So none of this is going to work unless we all start to learn how to breathe. And there's article after article. There's one article called The Best Diaphragmatic Breathing Exercises I would refer you all to. And there's 3 videos there. And there's one called Lateral Breathing. There's one called Strengthen Your Lungs Now. Get tuned into all those breathing techniques, because that's the one thing that if we don't do it, our rib cage is going to get tighter. And it does happen as we age. And everything else will work better. If that's like the kingpin. And then the other stuff is tweaking your individual weak link. But the diaphragm is the critical piece of the puzzle.
So we will make sure we highlight all of those different things. I'll be diving into them since I work with a lot of women that are trying to, get the bodies looking a little bit better. And, myself included, always trying to improve. So thank you so much for coming on and sharing all of your knowledge. This is just great stuff. And so folks, go over to lifespa.com, check out all of Dr. John Douillard's stuff there. And hey, we look forward to seeing what's coming next from you and different trainings, and we'll make sure that we update things over time. Thanks again for coming on.
Dr. Jannine, thanks so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Hey, fellow health junkie, thanks for listening to the HealthFix Podcast. If you enjoyed tuning in, please help support me to get the word out about the podcast. Subscribe, rate, and review, and just get that word out. Thanks again for listening.